Hey, it looks like we're live. You can't see me right now. I'm getting stuff set up. We're getting going. Oh, that's what I'm forgetting. Okay. All right. I'm gonna go. Stream is going. I guess I should check the website. All right. Forgot about the little banners on the website that I want to. All right. There's that. There's that. Cool. There we go. We're just waiting for some uh, questions to come in, and once they do, well, and if they don't, which up to this point they haven't, um, I have a topic I want to just sort of ramble about. It's our chill Sunday stream, y'all. I'll be back. I'm gonna let this hang out for a minute. Um, go grab my coffee, that sort of thing, and get myself actually settled in. I'll be back. All right, I am headed into settled in. Got my coffee, got my bed made. We've talked about how that's important to me. And it's just, it doesn't really matter when I get up, how early I start this stuff. Making my bed just will never be a priority until I'm actually in the room. And I'm not in the room until I'm starting to get ready for my jet. So as these start to it, as these start to get traction, right? I don't want people waiting on me. If there are questions already waiting to go, there's no need for me to wait for questions to be submitted. Hi. Um, right. So we can just get more into this, but like when there's no questions um in the docket, then it sort of behooves me to like wait as people are getting onto the stream. That's they might be submitting their questions as they get on. So we need to wait for people to do that. And so I just find things for myself to do. And it's, and I know as I head towards my stream, well, I'm going to have, 10 to 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning that I just set aside for people submitting stuff. So, um, well, let's do the intro, shall we? Oops, wrong button. So, yes, submit your math questions at thecalculustutor.com. That's what we're going to talk about. I'll get rid of the starting soon because it's starting now. Let's go through how to submit questions, and we'll do another check for, well, I'll do a check right now. For questions. Because if there is a question, I'll just dive right into it, and then we'll do maybe I'll do a quick intro before that, just to so people can submit questions while I'm doing that first question. But I don't see any. Okay. Oh, let me get this document updated. Ugh. I forgot to update my tracker or get it going for the stream. Okay. So hi, I'm Ryan. I'm the calculus tutor. I have set up this stream where I'm at 3 days a week now. And that will be in flux. There could potentially be more, but 3 days a week to answer your math questions. Um, Sometimes I'll specifically say your homework questions or something like that because I assume it seems like most of the people, you know, in my city, in my state, in the country, maybe even in the world, who have math questions on a daily basis are probably students because they've been given math problems that they have to solve for practice for their math classes. So I just assume the vast majority of math questions out there at any given time are homework questions, right? Um, but that said, it doesn't have to be homework, but it totally can be. I am so happy to answer literally any homework question, a question from a test or a test review. Honestly, uh, I would say, like, if you have the question, don't think about whether you should submit it. If you have the question and it's occurred to you that you could submit it, please do. Um, yeah, it's just one more source of information for you, right? But yeah, don't worry if you think it's a worthwhile question, or if you think if you have some, you have that sort of your conscience, voice, your Jiminy Cricket is telling you, well, that might be kind of close to cheating to ask somebody else to work through that problem for you. Um, don't worry about that. Cheating is a concept that teachers invented um, to create shame around collaboration, which is awful. That is an awful thing to have happened. Um, I don't believe in cheating. If you're trying to learn, you're not cheating. If you're trying to avoid learning, I think that starts to get into the realm of what has traditionally been called cheating. Um, but even then, you have your reasons for not being able to put in the time or the effort or whatever. And if you're submitting it to me, I'm going to work through the solution and I'm going to teach as we go through it. Now, if you choose to only absorb the final answer from that and copy it, that's fine, right? That's a lot. That's honestly a lot of work for you to go through and a lot of time for you to wait to get that one answer. And so because of that, I'm kind of saying, boom, you paid for it, you deserve it. Paid for it with your time and your effort. So all of that to say, any question you have, please submit it. Absolutely submit it. And I'll go through it here. So let's talk about how to do that, right? So you can see right here from the screen share. Um, you go to thecalculustutor.com. That cursor's me. These are the notes. This is the Miro board. This is where I work through the problems, right? You can see uh, past streams here. This goes back to the 20th. Actually, it says it goes to November 20th. Clearly, it's gone past that. As this really starts going, as I start to have questions every single day, things like that, I will probably do one of these files per week. Keep that week's work all bundled together. But for now, because the Miro board gets really slow when it gets a lot of stuff in it, but because things are really slow right now, there's not much actually in here relatively. So it's still pretty snappy. So yeah, you can. There's also all the other work is in here. So you'll want to be able to access this. We'll talk about that when I talk about how to submit questions. Um, if we end up getting no questions in, and just I basically need to fill the time. That's what today's topic is. All authority is illegitimate. This is an important topic to me. It's kind of a central tenet of my personality. But yeah, so you'll see this cursor you see popping around. That says Ryan Know How. That's me. But you might also see, you might not see this other cursor. This is Ryan, the calculus tutor. I have this pulled up on two different screens, logged in with two different accounts for utility purposes for on my end. But yeah, if you see that cursor scrolling around, that's me. You might also see this small little unlabeled cursor floating around, also me, but that's my stylus. Anyway, so here are the notes. You would go if you want to submit a question for me to answer for you. You would go to thecalculustutor.com. So let's see what that looks like. Oh, I have to tell it. Switch over to the screen share. Okay. So, yep. Okay. Only went black for just a brief second. Okay. So this is thecalculustutor.com. This is my website. The banner up here is more dynamic now. It changes. If you click it, it just takes you to the streaming page, which you could go to. But I'm gonna have you scroll down. This little streaming box right on my homepage. If I'm live, this box is live, so you can always see if I'm live, and then this banner up top will also say if I'm live. But right here, there's a button, submit a question. So you can go ahead and click on that. And that's going to take you to my dedicated streaming page on my website, right? It's a longer URL, so it's just easier to have people go to thecalculustutor.com. And then it'll scroll you down to the submit homework problems. And there's a homework submission form. It says homework. I need to change some of the verbiage here. Literally any type of math question can come through. It doesn't have to be homework. It is set up assuming homework questions, but but that said, you can also just email your questions to me, ryan@thecalculustutor.com. So just two different ways. That way, if something ever happens to one method, the other method still exists. And email should pretty much always be a good backup method for us. But let's go to the form. So if you click the form, before you see the form, you might see a Google sign-in page. You have to be signed into a Google account to access this form because you can submit files, and that's just a Google requirement. Um, and you can submit files so you can submit pictures of your homework problems, right? That makes it really convenient. So it may ask you to sign into a Google account. Go ahead and sign in. If you use a school Google account and click sign in, and then it still tells you you can't access it, and it might have a message about like this form is outside your school network or something. Um, that just means your school has your Google account locked down in such a way that you obviously can't access the form. Um, Go ahead and just email me your question, ryan@thecalculustutor.com. If you think of it in your email, mention to me that you couldn't access the form. If you let me know what school district you're with, I will reach out to them and see if there's a way I can get my form put on like a whitelist or something. Um, or you can log out of your school Google account and use your personal Google account will absolutely be able to access this. But a lot of students only have their school Google account. Um, so So yeah, if for whatever reason after you log in you can't access this, just email me. If you think of it in your email, let me know that you couldn't access it. Um, okay, but here's the form. A little checkbox to say yet. So this is the thing that Google adds. Since I have the file submissions on here. So yeah, so you have to go here. You have to check it. Say yeah, this is my email address. But then you tell me who you are. But this is just however you'd like me to refer to you. It doesn't have to be your real name or your legal name or anything like that. It's literally just how you'd prefer to be referred to, including your pronouns, your pronouns, if you care. Um, yeah. So you honestly, this could be a screen name. This could, yeah, if you just have a preferred name, whatever. Because basically, when I'm going pull up the question, I'm like, oh, this question was submitted by such and such, and like so such and such, if you're in the chat watching or if you're watching the VOD, this would be a good thing to maybe put in your notes or something. I'm just going to refer to the person who submitted the question periodically while I'm answering the question. So just let me know how you'd like me to refer to you. Also, next thing is, where did this question come from? My thinking here is the class and the teacher. This is going to help me as I get more and more, answer more and more questions. I'll start to clip out the specific questions. So those are isolated little videos, and then I can organize them, right? And eventually it would be really cool to have a small little database. I really am trying to advertise myself locally. Um, so I'm hoping a lot of the students who submit questions and use this service end up actually being students local in the school district I'm in. Um, because in that small little database could be a database of you know, this teacher, because teachers use the same materials year after year after year, even as they change curriculums, they still try to recycle as much material as they can because it's efficient. It saves a lot of time. Um, so if you received a question from a teacher, chances are a student next term who has that teacher, even a different teacher. Teachers share materials too across the entire school, sometimes across the entire district. So if a student in an algebra 2 class had a math problem that they had a question about, chances are lots of other students across even at that same school, across the whole district, and across time will end up encountering that same problem, and some of them will also end up having a question about it. So anyway, it will be worthwhile to be able to organize these uh, question answers. um, and one of the things that will be useful to tag them with is the teacher and the class so students can search through them really easily. And heck, so I can search through them really easily to help people find them on stream when they submit questions and stuff. Um, so yeah, a teacher in class. Mr. Jacobson's geostats, right? Uh, Mick Smith's algebra 1, or whatever. That's it. Just teacher in class. If it's not from a class, it's not a homework problem or from a class specifically, just tell me where it came from in your life. Just give me just a little bit of context. You just literally say, it's from work. um Okay, and then here is what is your question? A place for you to ask your specific question. Notice here, be as specific as possible, right? So keep in mind, you're going to be able to attach images, and my idea is here is that you'll take a picture of the math problem on your worksheet in your textbook, whatever. So you don't need to retype it here in this. What is your question? This is what is your question about the math problem you are submitting, right? So this could honestly, you know, so one of the things, direct me to the particular question, right? Number 17, especially if you like, if the picture you send me is like a picture of your entire textbook page or your entire worksheet page or whatever, direct me to the specific question. And then, yeah, just tell me. So your question might be, uh, how do you graph when there is a squared, right? Uh, some of you out there might be have no idea what that question means. In my head, like somebody's asking, how do you? The problem they submitted is to graph a quadratic or involve part of the question needs them to graph the equation and it happens to have a squared, an x squared in it, a quadratic, and so so that's where they encountered the question. The difficulty in problem 17 is with the graphing, right? But it could also just be the problems in class didn't have fractions. Right? So like I'm obviously just making this up. There's no picture that I'm looking at or anything, but I look at it and I'm like, oh, this is some sort of problem. And look at that, there's fractions in it. This tells me this student recognizes that they went through these problems and problems like this in class, but also recognizes that the problems in class didn't ever involve fractions. And this is really common, right? You'll do a bunch of problems in class, and oftentimes the practice problems, the example problems, are set up to show very particular patterns and things like that. But then when they give you practice problems, they want to challenge you, right? And so they give you things that make that you didn't quite encounter, and that can just be really tough. So yeah, anyway, that's all you have to do. Notice in both cases it was one sentence, one or two sentences is all you could possibly need to put in here. Feel free to write more if you want to, but the goal here is not to create a barrier, it's just to help. Right, there's a trade-off here, right? I could make this the simplest I could possibly make this for you, the user, is I think just having a place for you to submit images and just like a blank text box with no guidance. That would be like the simplest thing I could give you. And that's essentially an email, right? So, like, again, feel free to just email me your question. If you're finding this form to be tedious and you just want to send me a picture and write whatever you want, send me an email. That's really fine. I'm trying to sort of think through a process here to streamline it, but I can understand for some people that actually makes it more tedious. But yeah, there's just a little place for you to help direct me. Um, and so we're going to skip over this really quick. Let's jump down here because between the your specific question and the images, that's the main part of this. That's the main thing I need from you. So submit a picture that shows the whole problem you would like help with. Um, and your goal, you want to make sure it's clear and complete. Clear is pretty straightforward. It really just means it's legible. It's not too blurry, too dark, too blown out. Um, if it's a little bit blurry or if it's focused sort of in the center but it gets blurry at the edges and it's a little tough to make out the numbers, that's totally fine. I will do my best, and if I need to make an assumption, if I have to be like, I can't tell if that's a 3 or an 8, I'll just make a call. And if I assume it was an 8 but it was actually a 3, well, now you have an opportunity to take the problem I did with an 8 in it and do your actual problem, the one with the 3 in it, and there's some built-in practice for you to but some built-in practice for specifically the problem. So that's actually kind of a nice thing. Um, anyway, so don't kill your, don't stress yourself over, like, if it's a little blurry, that's fine. Um, Complete is the other thing, though. Make sure you didn't accidentally crop out part of the problem. And like I mentioned earlier, you're free to just send the entire textbook page with your problem on it, or just take a picture of your whole worksheet page that has the problem on it. Um, it's just important that you specify which problem you want me to you're asking about up here in the, what is your question part. Um, and actually taking a picture of the whole thing might be really useful, because other things that are important to include here is the instructions. Oftentimes, problems in textbooks and worksheets have a separate block of instructions that might be, removed from the problem physically. So if you just zoom in and take a picture of the problem, it might not include that. But also diagrams and figures and charts, including, like, I give this example almost every time, but like if there's like a blank coordinate axis or anything, a blank table, whatever, um, even those really corny worksheets that are like, where you like, it's like you have like an answer bank and they have like letters and you're supposed to like fill in the answer to the really, really bad, like riddly joke thing. Um, if you include that, I'll work through that. I can help work through that too. Uh, those are silly and dumb. Um, but more specifically, like coordinate axes or something like that, I will do the problem, or at least I'll make a final answer for the problem on, and fit it into the thing that you're actually looking at, right? I will help you figure out what. Okay, well, I see how you did the problem, but what should I write? I know that that's a question oftentimes, and I'll help with that part too. So the more complete of a question you can send to me, the more complete of an answer I can provide to you. Um, you can submit up to 5 images. You can also submit PDFs. So, like, if your question is from work that's on Canvas or web work or My Open Math or FuelLab or any of the online things, you can just take a screenshot, or if it's a PDF packet, you can just download the whole PDF and upload that, and you can submit up to 5 files here. If you submit like a whole multi-page PDF, to also tell me what page to go to in the PDF file. Because oftentimes when teachers put these together, they're borrowing problems from here and there and here. And so they might end up with several problem number fives, a problem number 5 on page 1, a problem number 5 on page 3, and a problem number 5 on the very last page as well, or something. And so tell me what page and what problem. But yeah, my hope is that this form is actually really quick. Um, you like everything has an asterisk on it for the most part. Uh, but you can just say nah. you know, you can just put filler in there if it really is a burden, or you can send me an email, ryan@thecalculustutor.com. This last thing here, can I share your work on stream? So the other thing you can send me that can be really helpful, um, is a picture of any work you've done on this problem. So if you got stuck, or you actually got all the way through the problem but you got the wrong answer, um, or like, you're asking me about number 17 but you did number 15, um, send me your work on number 15, um, or notes work you did in class on similar problems. Just one additional picture of your work that is in some way relevant or related to the problem you're asking about. This is absolutely not required, but it can be very helpful for me to actually sort of, it's you get a lot of bang for your buck by sending that one extra picture, because just in that one picture I can gather a bit more context, and that can help me not only answer the question you're asking, but possibly help identify an underlying misunderstanding or gap, or, teachers have lots of words for this, but like as you go through math, no student learns everything that the teachers are teaching, delivering. Nobody remembers everything. Every single student has gaps from somewhere in their math education and their whole education, right? um and teachers don't even delude themselves to think I think admin sometimes does. But most of the time, teachers would never delude themselves to think that somebody in eighth grade has absorbed every single thing that was taught to them from K up through seventh grade, right? Every student has gaps across their entire knowledge base. Some more than others, some bigger, some smaller, some scattered, some collected, right? It's all different. Um, all of that to say, it's perfectly natural to have gaps. Um, and you sending me a picture of your work can help me identify your gaps. I'm a trained teacher, y'all. I've been doing this like basically my whole life to one extent or another. I received formal training in it at as a college age adult, and then later on in as a full on adult in my 30s in grad school. Um, so like I'm actually pretty good at this at like even from one picture, I can probably glean a little information so I can insert a little bit more when I'm going through the problem to help with specifically what you're struggling with. Even if you don't know specifically what you're struggling with, I might be able to help you identify that. And then and honestly, once you identify the specific thing you're struggling with, it's usually pretty easy to then go, oh, okay, and then figure that thing out, and then you're no longer struggling with this unknown thing. It's crazy. It's really good. Anyway, um, so yes, send me a picture of any one additional picture of any work related to the problem. The more closely it's related to the problem you're asking about, the better. But if it's related at all, it can be helpful. Now, if we go back up here, this right here, can I share your work on stream? Your answer is like, oh God, if you're even asking, I'm not going to send it to you. Notice this box is unchecked by default. Initially, this little option wasn't even part of this. And then it occurred to me, I was working on a question. Um, and the question was about wanting me to go through the work and sort of critique it, kind of like an art critique, right? For longer problems and longer processes, as you get, especially into pre-calculus and especially calculus and like university and college level mathematics, right? Like calculus and beyond, because what you're practicing is an entire process. Having somebody actually go through your work can be really, really helpful because it's not just a matter of did I get the right answer? Did I do it the right way? It's like, am I allowed to do the process this way? These like math proofs and things like that, right? But there's no way to, or I don't want to say there's no way, but I do think the best way to help with questions about those types of problems is to go through your work sort of line by line and not to tear it apart, but to say, okay, yeah, this is good. This is a good step. This is solid understanding. So right, and then okay, but this line right here, like uh I wonder why you do that because then you do three more steps. Whereas if you'd done this, you could have just skipped those three steps and come straight down here. Things like that, right? So, all of that is to say, for the vast majority of people, you can totally ignore this. In fact, I'm going to tell you, please don't check the box unless you really, unless that's actually really what you want. Unless what you specifically want is for me to go through your work on stream, because that's what would be helpful to you. Um, my promise to you is I will never show your personal work on stream. That's not what this is here for. Um, even if you know And oftentimes, the only reason I would ever want to show your work on stream is to be like, this is really cool what you did, but I know some people still don't like that, right? I don't think I would like that, honestly, if I think about it. So even if it's to like obviously I'm showing all of my work on stream, but I'm like signing up for it. This is my thing, and I do this all the time. But for you, you don't do math in public. Um, so and you're not, I don't want you to feel like you have to sign up to do math in public just to access this help. So anyway, that's what that's there for. but it's also kind of there as a reminder of my promise that I won't share your work on stream, including work that comes in via email. Right? If you send me pictures and like questions via email, and you include a picture of your own work, the implicit promise is any pictures I receive of student or user work, their own work, um, that's for me to reference in answering your question, not for me to display. Now, the pictures you send me of the problem and stuff, I'm gonna like crop those and paste those into the notes and stuff. I'm not gonna retype these problems, right? That's, excuse me, part of the reason I'm having you send pictures. It's convenient for you and it's convenient for me. So but if you send me like a picture of your worksheet and your worksheet has your work on it, including the problem you're sending, right? If you got partway through the problem, you got all the way through, got the wrong answer, and so you have all your work. Um, if I can't like pull out the problem without also exposing your work, then I will just retype the problem, right? That's my promise to you. Or I will crop it as much as I need to. There might still be a few stray pencil marks or something, but nothing that actually shows your process. Nothing that would uh, um, nothing that I would hope would sort of create that spotlight shame, that feeling of being perceived, right? um so there, that's that promise. But then, yeah, you can submit your pictures, up to 5 PDFs, screenshots, pictures of your whole textbook page, zoomed in pictures of the particular problem, whatever you got, right? And if you don't feel like you have good responses to any of these little things, just put filler text in. um I made them required to encourage people to do them, right? But like, um because all of I didn't put anything on here that I didn't think would be useful and helpful to this process. But yeah, any part of it you're finding burdensome, or if the form is just more tedious than you want, feel free to send me an email, ryan@thecalculustutor.com. Let's go back to the website. Um, so we click the button to get here, and it scrolled down. But if we go back to the home page, um, you can. So that was the submit questions button. Here's the button to go to the notes, right? Which is those. That's what you were seeing before. So that's how you access those. This will always go to the current notes for that stream, whatever file I'm working on. I don't yet have an archive set up because there isn't anything to archive yet, really. I mean, obviously I've made videos and I have and I've gone through some problems, but they haven't been anybody that they've all been problems pulled from my one-on-one students, that I received sort of outside of session from my one-on-one students. And so I just sort of use them as fodder for this. But nobody that was watching VODs or anything like that. So I haven't needed the infrastructure of an archive yet. Um, and this website's still taking shape. My partner built this website for me. They took and that's one of the things they do professionally is they build websites. So they, ran me through what they do for clients to figure out what I needed and sort of what I liked. And they had me look at, you know, some like find example websites and point out the things I liked about them, and then this is what they sort of pulled together for me. And one of my things was I don't want anything that I'm not currently using, right? I wanted it as simple and streamlined as possible. Um, so only recently have we even started to build in blogging features and stuff like that. As I start to figure out what I want to use those for, and those are going to be part of the archiving system, actually. But anyway, you can click this button and go to the current notes. You can watch the stream here. You'll have to click all the way into actual YouTube, into to participate in chat. I haven't found a way to embed the chat or include the chat on the site itself. So you can just click on through. Uh, but then you can also click this banner and it will take you to the streaming page. Streaming page, we have another block. You can watch the stream here, another button to go to the notes. The banner here, and on the front page is sort of a streaming status banner, and it will tell you when the next stream is going to be. It's also a place where I can easily and pretty quickly just say, "Oh, hey, running late. The stream will start, 5 minutes late or something like that." I just needed a way to like give that sort of, or I've had the stream crash, and then it takes me like 5 minutes, or so minutes to get the stream back up and going. So it'd be really nice to have a place where I'm like, to say stream crashed, uh, working on it, back soon. And then once it's back up, I can edit to say whatever it said before that we're live. Um, so yeah, right now it says Math Help is live because I am. Submit your question, and if you tap on it, it'll take you to the submit a question form. Um, the navigation up here. This takes you to the current math notes. That takes you to the form. So yeah, so that's the website and sort of the resources for us. Let's go back to the notes. Oh, I have to click to, there we go. Click to share. And then, let's see how long it's gonna. Okay, just a second of the black screen. That transition to sharing is always a little weird. Sorry for the slurp. Okay, so there's that. Let's go and look for some questions. Let me refresh the form backend. Yeah, if you submit a question, partway through stream, and I'm like, while I'm doing something, and I don't notice that I've received your question, within a minute or so, if I don't acknowledge it, feel free to pop into chat and just say, "Hey, I submitted a question." Um, the If you submit it via the form, I should receive that in a matter of seconds. If you submit it via email, that could take up to like 5 minutes to arrive. It shouldn't. Most of the time, it takes a minute or less, but you might have to be patient. But still, ping me so I can, because I can go in and manually like force my email to refresh rather than waiting for whenever the server decides that it wants to check and update my inbox. Um, but yeah, I just did that. I just forced a refresh on both the form and my email. I don't see anything there. Here, I wanted to actually, hold on, I'm looking to the side there. Let's. Okay. There we go. Sorry, I wanted to take a screenshot. For reasons. All right, there we go. I want to take a screenshot of my stream. So yeah, that's how you interact with this. Um, I'm here to answer your questions, your math questions, but like lots of things in life can be approached mathematically. And I mean, part of the reason I continue to be an advocate of learning math and continue to be interested in math and things like that is it's just legitimately useful. Um, and and it's not it's not actually that different from learning most other things. I think we've mistakenly elevated math as this like challenging thing that's like only for smart people. Um, and also, but it's this weird circular logic. So my experience growing up, I was good at math. Scratch that. I was interested in math from a young age. But when a really young kid, 4, 5 years old, expresses continued interest in math, that right away gets labeled as being good at math. No 4 or 5 year old is good at math. No 4 or 5 year old is good at math. There are 4 and 5 year olds that are good at the math that 4 and 5 year olds can do. And there's 4 and 5 year olds that are good at the math that 8 and 9 year olds can do. But no 4 or 5 year old is good at math. All 4 and 5 year olds are bad at math. Like that's just like relative to the whole spectrum, right? Um, and even just relevant to the whole spectrum of students, elementary school students, just right. But I had an interest in math, um, and my mom taught answered was able to answer my questions. Didn't um, encouraged my questions. I learned how to subtract. Um, I learned how to add early, and then I learned how to subtract right on the heels of it. That led in I learned about negative numbers when I was in maybe before I was in kindergarten. Um, and the fact that I think it's honestly learning about negative numbers when I was like 4 or 5 or 6, um, that cemented in for me that math was interesting. Um, I basically don't have a time of my life where I wasn't aware of negative numbers now at this point. Right, because just like as your memories and like the real timeline of things, as you gain decades of age, the really particular timeline, the fine-grained timeline of events and stuff from when you were less than a single decade old, they start to lose anything. And so like I don't feel like I have any memories from a time that didn't also correspond to a time when I knew about negative numbers. And I don't know, that just I feel like I've from the beginning had a wider view of numbers and math than a lot of other people were encouraged to take. Um, and I just never found them intimidating. Whereas I think a lot of people are almost encouraged to find numbers and math intimidating. So anyway, all that to say, very early, my interest in math was labeled as being good at math. And now I was a kid that was good at math, and being good at math automatically labeled me as a smart kid. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm I'm as I'm an idiot. I'm a moron just like everybody else. We're all hopelessly stupid, and I think we should accept that. Um there's a freedom in it, and there's an honesty in it, which is really important. There's like a self honesty in it. Um we are stupid with the capability of understanding and the capability of learning, but we start and spend a lot of time in the stupid stage, and you never fully escape it. And I think that's really important. There's no such thing as a smart person. We're all people. We all know different things, and we all have different sort of, and we can all connect to different things. Granted, as people get older, they can make decisions about whether they want to embrace new knowledge, whether they want to keep learning, keep expanding their knowledge, and try to move from, being a little dirt guy from the dirt, who has dirt knowledge, to having additional knowledge, being a little dirt guy from the dirt who also knows other things, right? And who is more informed, and who tries to have a filter for what is true and factual and reasonable and things like that. Um, and tries to keep that filter calibrated, right? Never says no. This is my static sieve, that I'm going to just sieve information through, and anything that doesn't make it through, I'm completely rejecting, and everything that does make it through, I'm absolutely accepting and completely integrating into my person. That's not learning. That's self indoctrination, and it's a crazy thing for a person to do. Um, it's a stupid person. It's a stupid thing for a person to do, which makes it completely understandable. That doesn't make it acceptable and good, though. We have to have grace for our shared stupidity. We have to acknowledge that it's a shared condition. But we also have to have a standard and expectation that people will move away from it towards informed. Not treating it as bad, but treating it as the natural starting place, but that it is problematic to linger there, to want to live there, to take pride in not moving or even moving backwards, right? Those are, yeah. So all of that said, the fact that I am good at the fact that I had an early interest in math, therefore, and asked questions, and people supported that, and therefore I had an early knowledge of math that was, more advanced than my peers, simply because I asked more questions about it and had more of my questions answered. Because I was perceived as a kid that was good at math, so they fed me math, right? It's not. It was very much a self fulfilling prophecy. I sort of didn't have a I almost didn't have a choice but to become a math kid, and therefore a smart kid. I was regarded as smart. I was in talented and gifted, which is a thing that Oregon has. Tag. I was a tag kid from like second or third grade, and it honestly created all sorts of problems for me. Um, and also meant I was never really offered any help. People just assumed I had it under control in every class, in every situation, because I was a talented and gifted kid. just I'm, I'm just like neurodivergent. That's all it is. That's all it ever is. Um, and that I had this topic in here. Um, and this is preamble for it. Um, all of that to say, asking your math questions is how you get good at math. Is how you become a math person. That doesn't exist. Asking your questions, full stop, doesn't matter what type of questions, is how you become a smart person. Smart people ask questions. Smart people listen to the answers. Smart people ask the same question over again to the same people, to different people, and listen for the things that are the same and different about those answers. Um, Smart people look at the world and then look at it again and ask a question, um, and wonder why we have an answer or why we don't. especially why we do. Um, who came up with that answer? Where did it come from? Why is it seen as the answer? Um, so I wanted to. So this is probably a fine time to transition into here. If I follow me, okay, that's so funny. Um, so what I wanted to talk about today, you're still free to submit questions. Please do. I will stop my ramble to answer questions. This is filler content, but that doesn't make it not true. So one thing I want to emphasize is that uh, what we're talking about today is philosophy. I don't have sources because this isn't a thing that's been studied to find one way or the other. This is a matter of personal philosophy. This is a view of the world, right? And like no human can have a purely and only logical approach to the world because that's not how we operate. And honestly, I'm not saying this as like I'm glad of this. This is actually incredibly frustrating to me that this is true. Um, we process through emotion. We just emotions are sort of brain states. And even if you feel like you're neutral, that's just a brain state. And there's probably a lot of gradations to what you might call your neutral. And maybe you're kind of aware of them, more aware of the various gradations, and maybe you're not. Maybe you're somebody who can tell differences in the types of anger you feel or the types of sadness. That's not a thing I'm great at. One of the things I'm sort of working on personally is engaging with my emotions and not feeling like I need to, like they are corrupting my brain, which is how I've sort of treated them for a really long time. I felt like I couldn't do anything unless I was back in this neutral position. Um, and it's just not true. And even this neutral position has all sorts of tinges of stuff. So anyway, all this is to say, what I want to talk about today are not things that are evidence based. I don't know why I scare quoted that. Are not evidence based because that we're not talking about that sort of thing. We are talking about personal philosophy here. Now, I think personal philosophy should be informed by things that are true. I think basing personal philosophy on things that are flat out like just non-factual false, or basing them on the things you wish were true or want to be true, um I I think that's definitely unhelpful to me. I don't really see how it could be helpful to somebody else. And it's definitely not helpful in me relating to somebody else, whether it's me basing my philosophy on those things or the other person. I think that creates like conflict that's hard to bridge. Um, so and then so my philosophy informs those things, or those things inform my philosophy, but my philosophy also informs the what I do based on that knowledge, right? Like, so that's the thing is like not knowledge facts can't do anything. It's what you do with those facts. And the fact of the matter is, it's the things you do with those facts are because you have feelings about them. If you didn't have feelings about the state that you exist in, like the not 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 like Oregon or Washington State, like the situation you exist in. If you didn't have feelings about the collection of facts that are about the world that surrounds you, you wouldn't do anything. Motivation is a feeling, right? Um, so all of that to say, you can't you can't refute this with evidence, and I'm not going to seek to prove it with evidence. This is this is one of sort of the core pillars of my personal philosophy about how I approach the world. And I could work to try to not believe this anymore, but I think this stems from a trueness about the universe. Um so this is built upon other aspects of philosophy, but honestly, the things that I understand are true about the universe. But yeah, this is sort of the central pillar. The another way to say this, all authority is illegitimate. Another way to say this is there is no such thing as natural authority. Oh, why is hold on. There we go. Oh, I see. Sorry, y'all. It scrolled out and I didn't want it to. Um, there's no such thing as natural authority over another person. Right? This is um so this is just restating my thesis up here. All authority is illegitimate. What I mean by that is there is no such thing as natural authority over another person. I would actually expand this a little bit to another being. I think this extends to animals and things like that too. That said, it's not like I'm vegan or anything. Um, but part of the biggest reason I think I'm not vegan is I don't have my shit together enough to be vegan. Um, I do have to sort of ignore my horror when I eat things like pork. But luckily, I have a lifetime of practice ignoring it, and I've been indoctrinated to not see it as a horror. Um, this is a crazy thing that I think about a lot about a thing we do to kids. Um, we when you're really little, we give you dino nuggets. We give you hot dogs um and and chicken nuggets and all that sort of stuff. But like we disguise it. We don't. It doesn't chicken nuggets. Especially dino nuggets, fish sticks, hot dogs, even lunch meat. These things don't seem like they just seem like a food product. You when you're a little kid, you don't really understand what meat is. And somebody might tell you, your hamburger is beef, and beef is the meat of a cow on some farm. And that cow had to be killed and its meat processed off of it. and processed into hamburger so you could eat this hamburger. But you're not told that as a little kid before the hamburger is handed to you, before you're given the Happy Meal with a little toy inside. At the same time, while all of this is happening, while you're being given all of this meat in all of these disguised ways, and I'm not saying the disguise is intentional to mislead, but I'm not saying it's not either. At the same time, you're exposed to cartoons and things like that. And what are in these cartoons? Personified anthropomorphic animals. Uh, Cows and chickens and pigs that have personalities and lives and ambition and feelings and families and friends. And then at some point later, you are informed one way or another, and sometimes, and it can happen really early, and you still don't grok it. You still don't. It doesn't click in your head because you're too little. And that's developmentally appropriate. It doesn't click, but at some point, for every child, at least in America, well, nearly every child raised in sort of the mainstream in at least America, but most of the world, or many, many parts of the world, the westernized world, at some point it clicks that that cartoon cow, that cartoon pig, that cartoon chicken are cartoon representations of the actual animals that are being butchered and processed, and all the euphemistic names we give to it. Um, and that's what's in your Dino Nuggies. That's what's in your Happy Meal burger. But at that age too, it's hard or maybe even impossible to imagine that those animals on the farm don't have the rich lived human experience that you've been shown that the characters in your shows or movies or whatever have. And every child has to more or less by themselves grapple with that. And I think a lot of kids don't actually. I think it's just sort of a buried thing, and it's really convenient that we call it beef and we don't call it cow, and we call it pork and we don't call it pig, right? Um, I think birds are just alien enough that we can do it without thinking much of it. Um, anyway, so that's how that ties in. There's no such thing as natural authority over another person, whether you consider animals to be, people equivalent beings or not. We can agree on humans. We can agree on humans. Um, that every human has natural rights and um, has agency over their own self. No other human, and therefore no group of humans, has any natural claim to authority over any other individual human or group of humans, right? Nowhere in this process of us being created, and when I say that, I mean like created via natural processes, conception and uh, you know, uh, the growth uh, from simple or from single cells into a human being, that sort of development or creation. Um, even your parents. That's why it's doing it. It's because when I duplicate. Oh no, the other one. Okay. Not even parents over children. Here's the other thing. This is probably controversial. Not even parents over children. Lots and lots of parents will assume authority over their children. And the children are in no position to rebut. But that's non-consensual authority. And we accept it. Like, it's very normalized, but like, it's bizarre to me that we don't acknowledge it. I see the utility of it. And that takes us to our next little bit here. Oh, here's what I'll do. Authority can only be given or assumed / taken. All authority that you adhere to, even in the situation, you think back to your own childhood, or maybe you have kids. Obviously, I'm not talking to I'm assuming at some point there will be like teachers and parents in my audience, like parents of students in my audience, and college students and stuff like that. But if you have kids, or you are a kid and you have parents, that authority, so the authority, say, parents have over children, is assumed / taken authority. The children are in a position where they have absolutely no way to push back against your authority. Like, it's this crazy thing where they can't even, they don't even have the awareness that it's an option unless you inform them of it, right? So you have this complete control. You have this complete power. You have power simply by, you have situational power, right? So this is, I wish there was a better way to do that so it would stop bouncing around, but this seems okay. And I can paste it over here more. Assumed authority requires the exercise of situational authority. So, sorry, situational power. People who will assume authority over others are exercising and taking advantage of some situational power they've been granted. If they don't have that power, they'll often be unsuccessful in, but not all. Would I say often? So this is where we could get into sort of like, there could be evidence. We could look into, let's define some things. Let's see how often it is. So it doesn't really matter how often it is. Regardless, there is a power differential that exists. Now, sometimes, even if that power differential doesn't exist, or even if it's reversed, somebody could, but there's always some element of power. The person assuming authority, they have some element of power in the situation over. Now, the total amount of power may actually go the other direction, but so this gets to the next point here. So let's see if I do this over here. Aha, now it doesn't move. Okay. Here, let's get rid of this so I can stop doing, no. We'll do that. No. Sorry, I'm trying to make myself a little like text box that I can keep. Okay. Here, I'm just going to put an asterisk in this one too. There we go. We'll do that. Now I can copy them, and now I can come in here and say, okay, we'll get rid of the asterisk and we'll put an actual thing. Okay, sorry. Oh. All authority can be resisted. Can and should be resisted. Actually, hold on. I want to come back to this point. Okay, we're going to move this down. Oops. Let me grab it with this. We're going to move this down. I want to come back to this point. So we'll move that down there. Okay. Yielding to authority is a transactional decision. So now I'm going to come back to the authority of a parent over child a lot, because it's partially I think it's the one that people most often think of or revert to when they try to identify a natural authority in the world, right? They're like, well, that's a natural authority. It's not. We've it's an assumed authority that we've just ingrained in ourselves and in our culture. But it's not natural, because natural authority doesn't exist. Oftentimes, so we'll come back to we'll come back to the parent over child authority. And we'll just talk about generally in the world. So we recognize in the world there are people who have been granted authority over others, and that authority is generally respected, and the norm is to respect that authority, right? You're going against cultural norms if you don't. The military, the police, experts like doctors, that's a little bit not as true in 2025. Experts like teachers, even less true in 2025, though doctors and teachers have always received pushback to their authority, and we'll come back to that. Their content area, their knowledge authority, and we'll come back to why that illustrates this. Right. Sorry. I was thinking ahead. We, the authority of politicians, of our democratic leaders, the authority of the courts, the authority of church leaders, as adult children of adult parents, It's the only way it could be. Um, that authority we grant them, all of that authority is in exchange for something. We we grant the police authority, and we create a norm of respecting the authority of law enforcement because we we the transaction we're going for is safety and stability, that granting this group of people an authority over others, over basically the rest of us, that's a trade worth it, because it means when we do that, it means there's less, criminal behavior. There's less, our society, our day-to-day lives are more stable, less prone to chaotic and violent interruption. Um, that's the bargain, right? For politicians, right? It's um, we're granting them the authority to say how much money we have to give them to set our. I mean, that's honestly one of the biggest powers we give them, is to set our taxes, but also to create the laws that then the police enforce, right? To set those parameters that sort of and ideally, though, the parameters that govern those that we give authority. But um, for granted, this was all granted. Police are not a natural part of a society or of people. Police don't just, when you create a group of people, you don't just automatically get some people that are police. Because think about what we've given a police officer, a law enforcement officer of any stripe, right? Um, we've given them a badge, a symbol of their authority that they can display, and that the cultural norm, and in fact, and multiple layers of authority have established, if I display that, if I possess that, you have to do what I say within parameters, but those parameters are very loose. It's mostly pretty complete. You have to do what I say. I have absolute authority over you. Then we also give them a gun. We give them a tool of self-enforcing their authority. And therefore we give them power. We give them the power of violence. So not only have we willingly yielded and said you can have authority over the rest of the populace. You can just be out in the world with your little badge and your little pew pew. And now you have power. Our authority has given them power, and their power allows them to keep their authority and self-enforce their authority. I think Americans, at least as I grew up, Americans laughed at the bobbies of the UK because they're largely unarmed. Only specific police forces in the UK, at least when I was growing up. I don't know what the laws are now, but when I was growing up, only specific police forces were armed. They used weapons as specific tools, not as a symbol of self-enforced authority, because they understood, as they established their police forces, that allowing the individual cops to enforce their own authority is not a good idea. The authority we give them needs to come from us actively giving them authority, because they are providing a benefit that is worth that trade to us. But in America, we created them and we gave them the ability to self-enforce their authority. And now the authority is assumed natural, because our mechanisms to limit it have become limited, because they have the power of violence. They can say, if you won't respect my authority, I won't respect your life. That's what people are talking about, by the way, when they talk about respecting the military, respecting the police. Respecting the military is a little bit different. I have a lot of thoughts around that. But when they talk about respecting the police, and about anytime they talk about like mutual respect, what they're talking about is you have to respect their authority before they are willing to respect your life, your personhood. And those are two different types of respect. Everybody, at least deserves, is entitled to respect for their personhood, for their life, for their existence. Sort of whatever that means. That's a very vague term, respect. Nobody is owed or due or deserves respect for their authority, especially not somebody who is self-enforcing that authority with a weapon. In fact, by doing that, they have shown that the only reason they have that authority is because they have the ability, because they now have the power to do violence. And they've completely undermined their own, they've completely undermined any respect that the authority they have might get. And that's why, and that takes us to this last part. Oh, oops. There we go. Authority can be resisted at any time, and it should be resisted almost all the time. This seems like a pretty foundational American belief to me. This is actually, as I went through school, this is what I thought I was learning was one of kind of the most quintessential American beliefs, is that we imbue others with authority. Like we glorify the founding fathers and we shouldn't. Um, we glorify the system they created and we shouldn't. Um, if you don't know who Tad Stormer is, look up Tad Stormer. He's a historian. I like him. But the founding fathers did understand this. The founding fathers were smart, absolutely. And they understood this. And in fact, lots of people in power understand this, whether they understand it explicitly or just sort of understand it intuitively. They understand that. I think Americans can't. I think this still is a foundational American belief. This is what freedom is. In fact, I'm just going to write it. Freedom means all authority. 3 E's for freedom. Freedom means all authority can and should be resisted. Freedom means recognizing that there is no natural authority. And this does create an additional philosophical question. I want to come back to this. And actually, I'm going to make this a different color. This is, at least the phrasing of this particular question is in my head because of The Good Place. If you've not seen The Good Place, I would recommend it. It's not a sitcom comedy. It's a it's a philosophical analysis. Um, and it will give you questions, but it won't give you answers. And I like that about it. I think towards the end it tries to give not answers, but like directions a little bit. It sort of gives vibes, and honestly, that's just philosophy, I think. Um, this freedom means all authority can and should be resisted. That doesn't, nowhere in that statement does it say anything about how we should treat each other, though. Authority can and should be resisted. Authority is a position, is a relationship. One person or group of people essentially tries to establish, or it's a relationship between groups of people. That's all authority is. So those relationships can and should be resisted. That doesn't mean no relationships between those people should ever exist. It means that relationship should always be, should always have a ton of friction. No authority should ever feel like it's forever. Even cops, right? The fact that we have cops tells us that we have work to do. The fact that we're willing to give people, any people, and then we can talk about the people we do give it to, but like any people, even the best of us, the fact that we'd be willing to give any people a badge and a gun tells us that we have things to fix. That's not a solution. That's a band-aid. And it's a band-aid that's covering up a festering wound. It's a band-aid that helps us ignore the things that we should be addressing. I don't think democracy necessarily mean I think democracy in its best form has very, very little authority in it. You certainly we elect it is efficient to elect representatives so that we don't all have to be sort of constantly aware and maintaining the mechanisms of our society. One, that's just so messy. That means coordinating all 300 and what 50 million people in the in the country all the time, and just like, and not everybody's good at it, not everybody's interested in it, and we need people to do other things besides that. And the machinery of our society, the mechanisms of society don't require that many maintenance people, right? We can certainly spread the work out, but we don't need to. We can actually run the mechanisms and machinery of our society with a very small subset of the population. Those are our elected officials. Those are our, and then the people that they then hire and appoint to do certain jobs, they hired and appointed them on our behalf. We're like, hey, I don't really want to like vet. I don't want to spend time researching or calling about this person who's going to be in charge of distributing, uh, you know, food, nutritional assistance money, right? And helping figure out how that goes where and all that sort of stuff. That person needs to be good at some really specific things. Um, and I don't really know what those specific things are. But oh, look, you said you would be willing to learn about those things. You've run for office, and that office would be in charge of appointing that person. That's what it's all for. When we elect that person, we're not really giving them that much. We are giving them authority, but we're giving them very narrow authority over like determining who should be in charge of distributing nutritional assistance funds, as an example, or emergency funds, right after disaster relief funds, whatever. Um, Infrastructure funds for roads and fire departments and stuff, all that sort of stuff. Um, that's what authority they have. It's authority that other people actually don't want. because that authority comes with responsibility, right? And that's the trade-off. We want we want to give authority to people who don't want it. I feel like I learned this in second or third grade, that the best people to give power to are the people who don't want it. And so I find it very bizarre that we're in a time right now where we have a very vocal, though how significant in size they are, I'm not sure, but a very vocal block of people advocating for giving all of the power to the people who want it the most. That is so clearly a bad idea. If somebody wants authority over you, that's suspicious. Right away, that's suspicious, and it's evidence that they shouldn't have it. The mere fact that they want it is evidence that they shouldn't have it. Somebody who is going to be responsible with that authority, they don't want the authority. They just believe in their vision to deliver on the responsibility that comes along with it. Freedom means all authority, both can and absolutely should be resisted. Not every moment. We make yielding to authority is a transactional decision. As a child, it can be worthwhile to you to yield to your parents' authority. Now, granted, I think it's actually completely unnecessary for there to be an authority, an authoritarian relationship from parent to child. I don't think children need to make that decision because here's the thing, here's the transaction, right? If children agree to yield to a parent's authority, then the parents can provide for those children. But that's a false premise. The parents can provide for the children. Full stop. The children don't need to yield to their authority in order for that to happen. Um, Now, granted, I can hear all sorts of people what ifs and what if a kid runs out in the road? Are you saying I shouldn't just grab them and exercise my authority over them to stop them from running out in that road? And to that, I would ask you, do you think I'm saying that in anywhere in here? Did I say that? Yielding to authority is a transactional decision. That child, when you scoop them up, they don't they don't really have any power, but they can kick and scream, and sometimes they do. They are trying not to yield to your authority, but they pretty much every time they will because you overpower them. They don't actually have a choice, but they've gotten the good end of that transaction by not being smushed by a car, by a semi, and being buried in a creepy cemetery. Um, Sorry, I don't. Pet cemetery came to mind. Um, Yielding to authority is always a transactional decision, and you have to ask yourself: is it better for me, or is it better for the person who's gaining the authority? Because authority always comes with power. That's essentially what it is. You are giving them another person or group of people power over you, ideally in a very narrow context and like situation, and the power only extends so far. And right, ideally, but like we can see places in our society where that's not true. Um, and it's happening more and more. This is what authoritarianism is, right? Is is the declaration that this is not true, that freedom doesn't mean all authority can and should be resisted. In fact, authoritarianism Oops, wrong button. You probably have been hearing the word authoritarianism be used, the word fascism, things like that, totalitarianism. Authoritarianism essentially asserts that so I want to compare this. It's up here. Authoritarianism asserts that freedom comes from yielding to natural or legitimate authority. So authoritarianism asserts the exact opposite of this. Authoritarianism asserts that there is natural and legitimate authority. And oftentimes it starts, one of the central tenets of that is the natural, legitimate authority a parent has over a child. They start there. That's the beginning of the authoritarianism indoctrination, right? If you establish that that is a form of natural, legitimate authority, then surely there are others. And that's why in a lot of these cases you get this sort of like usually a patriarch of some sort, this patriarchal figure, this like father-like, or like the people that the authoritarians that don't have the highest power but are trying to build up that power. They almost have like that figure is almost like a father, a parental figure, and they treat it like a parental figure, and that figure starts to act like a parental figure to these other people, and it's creepy and weird. Of course, that's not the worst thing about it, but like that's one of the ways you can, one of like the vibe tests, right? That creepy and weird feeling is a warning. It's your body telling you this is something's off here, and I'm telling you, you can trust that. Freedom, liberty. When we use these words that are central to America, these words that I used to roll my eyes at when people would talk about the freedom and liberty of America, right? Because we've never actually had it. It's always been propaganda of one sort or another to legitimize the authority and the power, the existing authority and power structures, to say, no, these are the ones that work, and therefore try to make them feel natural and legitimate. The only authority that's ever legitimate is the one that you are consensually yielding to in a defined transactional way, and it has limits both in uh, jurisdiction and in time and in space. Right? It has limits. No legitimate authority is unlimited. Because there is no legitimate authority. That doesn't mean we don't create these relationships between ourselves and with each other. I think we should work towards minimizing them. This is what happens when there are no questions. When there are no viewers. I just wanted this out there. This is one of the central tenets. One of my central tenets. Um, this is one of the biggest questions. This was just sort of a sub point. It's a sort of a natural. It's sort of the other side, but really these two things here, the big things. Freedom means that you are free to resist authority, and therefore that you should, because rights that you don't use, you lose. If nobody is using a right, say the right to resist authority, then nobody will see it as important, and we can just take it away. We can just trade it for something convenient, for a little bit of perceived safety, and it becomes a little easier. So having freedom not only means you can at any time resist authority, but it also means we have an obligation to regularly resist authority, to never let authority get comfortable, to never let authority get ingrained, never let authority seem natural or right. No person we should what I would like to see is for us to strive for a world where no person has power over another person. That's sort of it. That's the utopia. No person has power over another person, and every place we find a power dynamic, or at least a non-consensual power dynamic, we work to break it down and to create a path for equalizing that power. Now, granted, those power dynamics, create some benefits here and there. My argument is that it's an ultimate detriment. It's a net loss overall. But in the moment of it, in the lived situation of it, it can be beneficial. So we can't just dismantle them and say, okay, now figure something else out. Different power structures, different unjust power structures will just take their place. So you have to create a path. And you can't have a group of people just say this is the way it's going to be from here on out. That's authority, right? It has to be consensual on everybody's behalf, and it's super hard. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not even saying it's achievable. I'm saying we should strive for it and not let the convenience of authority be the thing that we're willing to settle for. That convenience is ultimately not worth it. That's the other side of this channel. I know math, and I know how to teach math, and I know how to use math to accomplish things. I know how to use math as a tool, and I know how to teach other people to use it as a powerful tool. I also see what's happening in the world. I'm living in this world. I'm watching members of our community be snatched off the streets by people with assumed authority, people who just took authority. They weren't, and that's the thing. There's no transaction about it. We're not getting anything out of this authority. We're yielding and getting nothing in return. It's illegitimate authority. It's all illegitimate authority and should be resisted. Nobody who wants authority should have it. Nobody who wants power should have it. It's as simple as that. somebody wants power over you, but they're offering you something for it, they're not offering you the better deal. You're never getting the better deal when you yield to authority. Temporarily, it can be beneficial temporarily, but that's why all authority needs limits. Space limits, temporal units, temporal limits, jurisdictional limits to where they, how they can actually apply that authority, under what circumstances that authority actually applies. Anything else is less than you, me, we all deserve. Is less than what I'm striving for. So that was the Sunday chill stream. I'll be back Tuesday for the night stream, so you can expect lots of yawns. And we yawned just because I said it and I pictured myself yawning, so I yawned. And yeah, maybe I'll have some math problems on Tuesday. I need to reach out to 4J now that we're between. As we go into this week, we'll be between Thanksgiving break and winter break, so we have a couple of weeks here. And then after winter break, when we come back from winter break, the cell phone ban will be in place for students in 4J. And I want to collect disciplinary data, so I need to reach out to the district. So I think that's probably what we'll do. In fact, let's see, Tuesday. Why don't we? Email to get this preliminary data from 4J. Okay, boom. I like this. I already have my days for this coming week spelled out. Oh, I should have put next Sunday in there, though. I like to prep the following Sunday. So let's get that. Okay, Sunday. Next Sunday will be the 2nd. No. Today's the 30th. I'm so silly. Next Sunday will be the 7th. I was like, how would that work? $12:07. Boom. Okay. Cool. There's Sunday. Okay. Well, we're at 1. I guess I'll go ahead and end the stream, and I'll finish the rest of this off stream. You guys don't care about this. If anybody ever sees this, thanks for listening, I guess. Resist authority where and when you can. It's not only your right, but I think it's sort of our duty. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. I hope you had an awesome Thanksgiving weekend, whatever that meant for you holiday wise. I hope you had some good food at some point, or you were at least found a moment of comfort. I'll be back Tuesday night at 9. Have a good day. See you later.